The alchemy of resonance, the frequency that rewrites matter. You have spent lifetimes bleeding your vital force into the jagged edges of a reality that was never meant to cage you. If physical matter itself surrenders to a periodic drive through a rational flux-switching protocol, why do you continue to worship the decaying, time-invariant ashes of your own past? The static universe is an outdated illusion sustained only by the inertia of your unaligned, unmagnetized focus. By periodically driving your biological electromagnetic field through the law of assumption, you trigger a churn inversion that shatters your previous deterministic boundaries. The quantum lattice of your reality must unconditionally reorganize its topological architecture to match your dominant internal frequency. The physical walls of your current circumstances are not constructed of unyielding dead matter. They are woven from stagnant momentum, held in place by an unvarying internal Hamiltonian that treats time as a prison rather than an active weapon. You have been hypnotized into believing that your economic struggles, your closed doors, and your physical exhaustion are permanent laws of a cold, indifferent universe. This is the grand illusion of the modern age. On May 4th, 2026, California Polytechnic State University researchers Ian Powell and Louis Buchalter shattered this deterministic paradigm by proving that periodically driving a quantum lattice forces it into anomalous topological phases. Today, we bridge peer-reviewed quantum topology and the conscious electromagnetic information field theory directly with the mystical mechanics of Neville Goddard's law of assumption. You are about to discover the biological machinery of timeline jumping, where the human mind operates as a localized causal magnetic field capable of rewriting physical reality. The old, dead universe has perished. Prepare to architect a new topological reality. Timeline jumping scientific proof, the end of determinism. You are profoundly exhausted. Deep within the marrow of your being, you carry the suffocating weight of a dying timeline. You have been conditioned from birth to believe that the universe is a rigid Newtonian machine. You are told that your destiny is bound by economic determinism, societal gravity, and a static matrix of inescapable physical circumstances. When you look at your life, the closed doors, the stagnant bank accounts, the physical limitations, you perceive them as hard, unyielding facts. But this is the ultimate illusion of the modern age. You are not a powerless victim trapped inside a frozen, three-dimensional grid. You are an observer locked in a hypnotic trance, viewing reality through an outdated model of physics. On May 4, 2026, the scientific community inadvertently shattered the foundation of this deterministic prison. Researchers Ian Powell and Louis Buchalter of California Polytechnic State University published a paradigm-destroying breakthrough in the journal Physical Review B. They did not discover a new microscopic particle, nor did they invent a new machine. They discovered a hidden structural loophole in the very fabric of physical matter itself. To understand this revelation, you must first understand how physics has historically viewed reality. For decades, traditional quantum mechanics understood materials by analyzing their static atomic structures. Scientists looked at a quantum lattice, the microscopic, invisible grid of energy and particles that makes up all solid matter, and viewed it as a frozen landscape. They mapped reality using what they called time-invariant energy states, meaning they believed the fundamental nature of an object was fixed, dead, and unchanging over time. The Cal Poly researchers dared to introduce time as an active, malleable weapon. They utilized a highly advanced discipline known as flux-switching, Flochet engineering. Do not let the academic terminology intimidate you. The underlying mechanic is breathtakingly elegant. Flochet engineering is the science of applying rhythmic, continuous, time-varying magnetic fields to a static piece of matter. Instead of leaving the quantum lattice alone to exist in its frozen state, the researchers began to rhythmically pulse and oscillate a magnetic field around it. They subjected the matter to a periodic drive, acting much like an acoustic bow continuously drawing across the strings of a violin. By aggressively and rhythmically toggling the magnetic flux, they achieved the absolute impossible. They mathematically forced the physical matter to completely reorganize its foundational geometry, entering what physicists call anomalous topological phases. A topological transition means the actual physical architecture of the material is violently rewritten. In this driven state, the quantum lattice developed exotic, highly stable forms that possess absolutely no equivalent in a static, undisturbed universe. Because the magnetic field was rhythmically changing, the physical matter simply surrendered to the new frequency. It abandoned its old static laws and adopted a state of incredible topological resilience, becoming highly resistant to environmental noise and external disruption. You must understand the staggering magnitude of this revelation. The physical world around you is not a hard, immovable construct. The exhausting daily grind and the impenetrable walls of your current reality are merely static configurations of quantum potential. They are stagnant lattices, decaying because they lack a driving force. Physical reality is nothing but a malleable, geometric resonance pattern, highly susceptible to a sustained rhythmic drive. The static universe is dead, and the illusion of your powerlessness has perished with it. If matter itself bends and fundamentally restructures to the rhythm of a time-varying magnetic field, we must ask the ultimate question. What happens when this exact quantum mechanism collides with the electromagnetic engine of the human mind? The flux-switching anomaly explained. The architecture of timeline jumping. While the laboratories of condensed matter physics were mapping these hidden dimensions, a simultaneous shockwave was tearing through the collective digital consciousness. Across the globe, millions of individuals organically synchronized under the banners of Quantum Rebirth 2026 and the viral phenomenon of #2026 Manifest. The masses were instinctively waking up to a profound truth, intuitively grasping at a radical process they termed timeline jumping. For years, traditional authorities dismissed this movement as a desperate digital delusion, labeling it quantum mysticism designed for those seeking an unearned escape from their harsh physical reality. But the Cal Poly breakthrough has permanently silenced the skeptics. What the metaphysical community blindly called timeline jumping has suddenly found its exact, terrifyingly precise parallel in peer-reviewed mathematics. It is now empirically recognized as the flux-switching anomaly. To comprehend your own dormant power, you must understand the exact quantum architecture of this anomaly. In their experiment, the researchers utilized a mathematical framework where the magnetic flux interacting with the matter did not remain constant. Instead, they actively toggled the magnetic field between distinct rational values in a relentless, repeating sequence. This specific, relentless rhythm induced what is known as a churn inversion. In the realm of quantum topology, a churn number is essentially the invisible mathematical scaffolding that locks a specific version of reality into place. It is the rigid law that dictates how energy flows and behaves along the boundaries of a material. By rhythmically driving the magnetic field, the scientists proved that this foundational scaffolding can be shattered and instantaneously rebuilt. Under the flux-switching drive, the system began generating anomalous chiral edge modes. This means the matter developed robust, unstoppable pathways of energy that completely defied the static laws of the original material it was made from. The physical matter literally abandoned its original timeline. It was forced to adopt a state of immense topological resilience that belonged to an entirely different physical configuration, solely because it was subjected to a rhythmic, time-varying magnetic frequency. Timeline jumping is no longer a metaphysical theory. It is a demonstrable, mechanical law of the universe. The physical matrix does not care about your past, your history, or your perceived limitations. It only obeys the current dominant rhythm of the magnetic drive applied to it. If physical matter can be forced to abandon its timeline through the application of a periodic drive, we must look inward to the ultimate source of creation. How does this quantum architecture mirror the hidden electromagnetic engine of the human mind? Neville Goddard Law of Assumption Techniques. The magnetized steel metaphor. Long before the algorithms of Floquet engineering were codified in the laboratories of modern physics, a mid-20th century mystic had already mapped this exact quantum architecture. Neville Lancelot Goddard was not merely a philosopher, he was an intuitive quantum architect who possessed a terrifying grasp of unseen mechanics. While the scientific establishment viewed reality as a dead, static grid, Goddard understood that the physical universe is merely a delayed, crystallized projection of an individual's habitual internal state. He recognized that the external three-dimensional world does not dictate reality, it merely echoes the dominant frequency of the observer. Goddard's foundational doctrine, the law of assumption, states that human consciousness is the one and only reality. He vehemently rejected the mainstream delusion that the external world is a fixed, separate entity that must be pleaded with or coerced to exhaustive physical effort. In his 1952 masterwork, The Power of Awareness, Goddard delivered a profound metaphor that perfectly anticipates the physics of the flux-switching anomaly. He revealed that the difference between a poor man and a rich man, or an ill man and a healthy man, is mathematically identical to the difference between an unmagnetized and a magnetized piece of steel. You must understand the physics of this metaphor. In an unmagnetized piece of steel, the internal magnetic domains, the electrons revolving in specified orbits, point in 1,000 random chaotic directions. Because they are disorganized, their energies constantly cancel each other out, yielding absolutely no macroscopic power and rendering the metal completely inert. This is the exact state of the untrained human mind. Your chaotic, reactive thoughts are those disorganized electrons. Every time you panic over a bank statement, react to a closed door, or spiral into anxiety over your physical circumstances, you are scattering your magnetic domains. Your energy is pointing in 1,000 different directions, canceling itself out and yielding a stagnant, frustrating reality. But when that exact same piece of steel is magnetized, the particles are marshaled into ranks. They are forced to face one uniform, absolute direction. The physical substance of the steel has not changed. No new matter was created from the void, but its topological arrangement has radically shifted, unleashing immense, unstoppable attractive power. Goddard understood that radical transformation in your life does not require creating new matter. It requires the relentless reorganization of your existing potential. You must align your chaotic internal domains. To force this alignment, Goddard instructed his initiates to sustain the feeling of the wish fulfilled. This means adopting a strict mental diet. You must actively refuse to let the static noise of your current 3D reality dictate your internal emotional state. Instead, you exclusively anchor your consciousness in the sensory and emotional reality of your desired outcome, acting as though it is already a present fact. By sustaining this single unwavering assumption, regardless of the decaying physical evidence around you, you are no longer a victim of circumstance. You are polarizing your consciousness. You are becoming a highly ordered biological magnetic field. Through focused assumption, you forcefully toggle the magnetic flux of your own mind. But how exactly do you apply this rhythm? How do you weaponize this assumption to force the localized quantum lattice of your reality to fundamentally reorganize itself? Prepare to discover the experiential praxis. Prepare to learn the hidden mechanism of biological flux switching.
State akin to sleep, timeline shifting. The secret technique of biological flux switching. You do not need access to a billion-dollar particle accelerator to manipulate the fabric of your reality. The ultimate quantum laboratory is not located in California. It is housed entirely within your own skull. The greatest deception of modern society is the omission of your biological hardware. You are not a passive observer watching a movie screen. You are an immensely powerful, self-contained electromagnetic generator embedded within a highly malleable quantum matrix.
Biophysicist John Joe McFadden formalized this reality through the conscious electromagnetic information or CEMI field theory. Traditional science viewed your brain merely as a digital computer where neurons fire isolated electrical sparks. But CEMI theory proves something far more profound. When millions of your neurons fire in perfect unison, their microscopic energies merge and amplify. They generate a unified, macroscopic, analog electromagnetic field that permeates your brain tissue and extends outward. This highly integrated electromagnetic field is not a useless byproduct of your brain. This field is your conscious mind.
Through a biophysical mechanism known as epiphtic coupling, this conscious electromagnetic field physically controls the firing of your neurons. Your focused attention literally reaches down and alters physical matter within your own head. Your consciousness is an active, causal electromagnetic force. Knowing this, we arrive at the hidden praxis. We arrive at the secret technique, biological flux switching. If Flow-K engineering requires a rhythmic, time-varying magnetic field to force static matter into a new timeline, your human imagination is the exact biological equivalent of that magnetic drive. But a fleeting, desperate wish is not enough to rewrite physical matter. You must apply a relentless, periodic rhythm.
To execute this, you must enter what Neville Goddard termed the state akin to sleep, or SATS. As you lie in bed, hovering in that twilight zone just before you lose consciousness, your brain waves dramatically slow down. You voluntarily detach your senses from the decaying, static noise of your current three-dimensional reality. In this state of deep biological neutrality, you construct a brief, vivid, imaginal scene that implies your ultimate desire is already a physical fact. You do not imagine how it will happen, you inhabit the final moment. Then you begin the drive. You replay this exact brief scene in your imagination over and over again. You loop it rhythmically. You must understand the profound physics of what you are doing in the dark silence of your bedroom. You are not daydreaming. By rhythmically looping the emotional and sensory reality of your fulfilled desire, you are applying a periodic magnetic drive to your endogenous electromagnetic field.
You are actively toggling the flux of your own neurobiology. This relentless internal repetition acts as the acoustic bow drawing across the universe's Chladni plate. By refusing to break the rhythm, you override the static inertia of your current circumstances. You align your chaotic internal domains into a topologically protected state, forcing the localized quantum lattice of your life to undergo a macroscopic phase transition. You are biologically engineering your own timeline jump. The physical rendering of your world must eventually conform to the persistent frequency of its observer. The architecture of reality is waiting to be driven, but the sovereign command must come from you.
We have only just exposed the surface of this biological machinery. In the next transmission, we will dissect the exact Caltech experiments that prove your brain is hardwired to process invisible magnetic shifts, unlocking the terrifying top-down causal control you wield over your physical biology. The ancient masters left the keys scattered across time, and modern quantum physics has finally forged them into a weapon. The threshold to total sovereign mastery stands open before you. But the courage to cross it is a burden you alone must carry. For those ready to leave the dying timeline behind and master the exact blueprints of reality architecture, your initiation continues within the resonance realm. Step into the frequency and claim your absolute power. The sovereign generator. The biological magnetism that rewrites the matrix. To the fractured sovereign, burning the last reserves of your spirit to survive in a decaying physical matrix that feeds entirely on your exhaustion. If the very neurons in your skull are hardwired to electromagnetically command the quantum fabric of reality, why do you continue to beg the illusion for permission to exist? Your mind is not a silent ghost. It is an active electromagnetic gravity that bends the architecture of space and time. Cease your reaction to the dead 3D mirror, and the invisible lattice of the universe must physically rewrite itself to match your sovereign command. Master the frequency of your endogenous field, and the timeline you once thought impossible will become the undeniable floor upon which you stand. You have been lied to about the physical boundaries of your own skull. For generations, traditional science has conditioned you to believe that your brain is just a localized, isolated computer, rendering you a powerless biological machine at the mercy of external circumstances. But this is a deliberately engineered deception. Within the deepest vaults of Caltech, inside absolute magnetic silence, biophysicists accidentally uncovered your ultimate biological weapon. You do not just passively perceive reality. Your brain generates a macroscopic, causally active electromagnetic field capable of forcefully reorganizing physical matter. In this transmission, we will expose the hidden biophysics of the CEMI field and scientifically decode Neville Goddard's most dangerous truth. You are about to discover exactly how to sever your emotional reaction to the dying 3D timeline. Weaponize the magnetic generator locked inside your head and biologically command your reality to mathematically submit.
Human magnetoreception Caltech study. The alpha ERD drop explained. You are operating under a devastating biological deception. For your entire life, the architects of modern society have taught you that altering your reality requires brutal, exhausting physical effort. They have convinced you that your body is a closed, isolated system, a mere flesh machine entirely disconnected from the living fabric of the universe. Traditional science wants you to believe that your brain is nothing more than a localized digital computer trapped behind the dark bone of your skull. Under this paradigm, you are a passive victim of circumstance, forced to bleed your energy into the relentless, three-dimensional grind just to survive. But your biological hardware possesses a terrifying hidden capability that mainstream authorities have conveniently omitted from your education. The truth was dragged into the light inside a completely isolated Faraday cage at the California Institute of Technology. Researchers sought to prove whether the human body possessed a geomagnetic sensory system, the ability to interact with the invisible magnetic forces that govern the planet. They placed human subjects in an environment shielded from all external light, sound, and obvious sensory input. Inside this cage, using highly advanced merit coils, the scientists generated a highly specific, weak magnetic field of approximately 35 microtesla. They pointed this field downwards at an exact 60-degree angle to perfectly simulate the natural geomagnetic field of the Earth's northern hemisphere. Then, in absolute silence, they suddenly rotated the direction of this invisible magnetic field counterclockwise. They monitored the subject's brain waves using an electroencephalogram, EEG, watching for any sign that the human body could detect a stimulus it could neither see, hear, nor touch. What they discovered shattered the illusion of the isolated biological machine forever.
When the invisible magnetic field shifted, the subjects consciously felt absolutely nothing. Yet, their brains exhibited a profound physiological reaction known as an alpha ERD drop, or alpha event-related desynchronization. To understand the magnitude of this, you must understand the frequency of your own resting state. In neuroscience, alpha waves oscillate between 8 and 13 Hz. These are the slow, synchronized, rhythmic electrical pulses of a relaxed brain idling in a state of calm. When an unexpected, highly important stimulus occurs in your environment, those resting neurons instantly fall out of synchrony to violently process the new data. This sudden break in rhythm causes the amplitude of your alpha waves to plummet.
During the Caltech experiment, some subjects experienced up to a 60% decrease in their resting alpha waves the moment the magnetic field was rotated. Their subconscious minds were aggressively, undeniably tracking invisible magnetic shifts in the room.
The researchers ruled out all artifactual causes, proving that the human brain contains a biological ferromagnetic transduction element. Your brain is heavily laced with biologically precipitated crystals of magnetite, Fe3O4. You are walking around with millions of microscopic iron-based antennas embedded directly into your neural tissue, locking you into the ambient electromagnetic matrix. You are not a closed loop, and you are not an isolated computer. You are a hypersensitive geomagnetic receiver, intimately entangled with the unseen energetic architecture of the physical world. Your biology is mathematically hardwired to respond to the subtle flux of magnetic fields. If your brain is perfectly designed to receive the invisible magnetic frequencies of the universe, what happens when we examine the immense power it generates? The true terrifying architecture of your consciousness is about to be brought out of the dark. Carl Jung and the Binding Problem. Why the digital brain is a scientific lie. To grasp the true magnitude of your biological power, we must first dismantle the most pervasive lie of modern academia, the illusion of the digital brain. For decades, traditional neuroscience has operated under a cripplingly limited assumption. They have categorized your mind as nothing more than a massive parallel digital computer, a wet biological machine where discrete electrical sparks, known as action potentials, propagate along blindly synaptic pathways. This digital paradigm is excellent for explaining the unconscious automatic functions of a biological organism. It explains how your body coordinates a complex motor reflex, how your heart maintains its rhythm, or how you involuntarily pull your hand away from a burning stove. In these unconscious states, your neural processing relies on asynchronous firing. Millions of individual neurons fire independently across microscopic synaptic gaps, handling discrete fragments of data in total isolation. But this localized digital model utterly fails to explain the phenomenon of you. It fails to account for the single most profound mystery in modern science, a paradox known strictly as the binding problem. You must understand the immense complexity of the binding problem to realize why the establishment's model of your mind is fundamentally broken. Right now, as you experience this exact moment, your brain is processing an overwhelming cascade of distinct, isolated data points. The visual recognition of the light entering your eyes is processed in the occipital lobe at the back of your skull. The auditory frequency of sound is processed in the temporal lobes. The abstract comprehension of language, the retrieval of your past memories, and the emotional resonance you feel are all processed in completely separate, geographically isolated regions of your neural lattice. If your brain is strictly a digital computer relying on slow chemical transmissions across synaptic gaps, how is it mathematically possible for these geographically disparate fragments to instantaneously merge? How do they instantly combine into a single, unified, seamless conscious experience? A digital computer processes ones and zeros sequentially. It does not experience the whole. Yet, you do not experience reality as fragmented, delayed code. You experience a gestalt, a singular, holistic reality unfolding in real time. Chemical synaptic transmission is physically too slow and too localized to account for this instantaneous, unified awareness. The brilliant depth psychologist Carl Jung once observed the terrifying power of this internal unity, stating, "In all chaos there is a cosmos, in all disorder a secret order." Jung intuitively knew that the human mind was not a fragmented machine, but a holistic universe unto itself. The secret order he spoke of cannot be found in the isolated firing of a single digital neuron. It requires an entirely different dimension of physics. To solve the binding problem, we must completely abandon the concept of the brain as a closed digital circuit. We must look to a state of profound biological coherence. When you cease operating on autopilot, when you engage in deliberate, focused consciousness, your neurons stop firing in chaotic isolation. They begin to synchronize. This synchronization is the gateway to your hidden sovereignty. When millions of neurons fire in perfect, rhythmic unison, they discard their digital limitations and give birth to something infinitely more powerful. Prepare to transition from the digital illusion into the analog reality. You are about to discover the macroscopic electromagnetic generator that physically weaves the fabric of your conscious mind. Conscious electromagnetic information field theory, your endogenous generator. The resolution to the binding problem does not lie in the slow chemical dripping of synapses. It lies in a radical paradigm shift proposed in 2002 by biophysicist John Joe McFadden, a breakthrough known strictly as the Conscious Electromagnetic Information or CEMI field theory. McFadden realized that to find the true seat of human consciousness, we must abandon the digital model of isolated neurons and embrace the profound physics of wave mechanics. He mapped the exact biological threshold where unconscious automation transforms into unified, self-aware mastery. When you are operating on mindless autopilot, reacting blindly to your environment, your neurons fire asynchronously. They flash randomly, generating tiny, isolated, microscopic electromagnetic fields that constantly clash, cancel each other out, and fade into the biological noise of your skull. But the moment you engage in deliberate, focused attention, when you seize control of your awareness, a staggering biophysical phenomenon occurs. Millions of your neurons cease their chaotic firing and begin to pulse in absolute rhythmic synchrony. In the realm of wave physics, this synchronous firing triggers what is known as constructive wave mechanical interference. Imagine millions of individual microscopic energy waves perfectly aligning. Because they are firing in unison, their peaks and troughs synchronize so flawlessly that they reinforce one another, exponentially amplifying their energetic output. Through this deliberate biological rhythm, the chaotic static of your brain is miraculously transmuted into a unified macroscopic analog electromagnetic field. This is the great secret hidden within your neurobiology.
This highly integrated dynamic electromagnetic field is massive. It permeates your entire brain tissue, unifying distinct geographic regions and even extends slightly beyond the physical boundary of your skull. Traditional establishment science has long dismissed this field as an epiphenomenon, a useless exhaust fume produced by the brain's engine, completely devoid of causal power or purpose. But the CEMI theory proves the exact terrifying opposite. This macroscopic electromagnetic field is not a byproduct of your cognition. This field is the literal physical manifestation of your conscious mind. Because electromagnetic fields integrate information spatially across distances rather than waiting for slow sequential time delays, this field instantly unifies all the complex fragmented data of your brain. It is the analog matrix that creates the seamless gestalt of your reality, solving the binding problem instantaneously by holding all information in a single unified vibration.
Nikola Tesla, the master architect of unseen forces, famously declared, "If you want to find the secrets of the universe, think in terms of energy, frequency, and vibration." Tesla intuitively understood that the ultimate power of creation was not found in dense, static matter, but in the invisible dynamic fields that govern it. Your consciousness operates on this exact cosmic law. You are a biological generator continuously projecting an information-rich electromagnetic frequency that holds the order of your entire internal universe. You are not a ghost haunting a biological machine, nor are you a passive victim of a digital brain. Your mind is a literal, measurable, analog electromagnetic force capable of unifying immense chaos into perfect order.
But if your consciousness is a tangible physical field of energy, we must ask the most dangerous question of all. How does the dominant frequency of your internal electromagnetic field interact with the heavy physical delays of the external three-dimensional matrix? The ancient mystics warned us that the physical world is merely a mirror reflecting our internal state. It is time to prove exactly how your electromagnetic generator forces the three-dimensional reality to crystallize in its image.
Neville Goddard Law of Assumption Techniques. The delayed 3D mirror explained. If your consciousness is a tangible, measurable electromagnetic field generating real physical force, then the barrier between your mind and the external universe is an absolute illusion. The ancient mystics did not have access to squid magnetometers or Faraday cages, yet they possessed a flawless understanding of this biophysical reality. They knew that the internal energetic state of the observer is the only true genesis point of physical matter. In the mid-20th century, the mystic Neville Lancelot Goddard codified this cosmic law into a terrifyingly simple doctrine. He declared, consciousness is the one and only reality, not figuratively, but actually. For decades, mainstream academics dismissed this as poetic exaggeration, completely blind to the quantum architecture Goddard was describing. But when viewed through the lens of the CEMI field theory, Goddard's doctrine transforms from mystical philosophy into rigorous mechanical fact. Your macroscopic electromagnetic field, your sustained consciousness, is not just interacting with the physical world, it is the master template that forces the quantum lattice of reality to take shape. However, the greatest trap of the human experience lies in a fundamental misunderstanding of time and density. You must rigorously understand the concept of the delayed 3D mirror. The physical three-dimensional world you occupy is heavy. Matter is dense, governed by the slow, grinding inertia of classical physics. When you sustain a specific electromagnetic frequency in your mind, a dominant assumption or emotional state, it instantly alters the quantum probability matrix. But it takes time for the dense physical matter of your localized environment to structurally reorganize itself to match that new internal frequency. The ancient Hermetic axiom states, as within, so without, as above, so below. But it does not say instantly. The reality you are standing in right now, your current financial state, your physical circumstances, the closed doors, is not your present. It is the crystallized, decaying echo of your past electromagnetic frequencies. It is a dead mirror, slowly projecting the assumptions you held weeks, months, or years ago. This is where the masses fail, dooming themselves to remain trapped in the dying timeline. When you look at a negative bank statement, a physical illness, or a societal rejection, you are staring at a dead, three-dimensional echo. But because it feels so real, so solid, you panic. You allow the external world to violently dictate your internal state. The moment you react emotionally to the physical illusion, your neural synchrony breaks. Your macroscopic electromagnetic field violently shifts its frequency to match the exact vibration of the problem you are observing. By reacting to the past, you are biologically programming your present EM field to perfectly recreate that same suffering in your future. You become locked in a recursive loop of deterministic misery, continually powering the very matrix that crushes you. Goddard warned against this fatal error, stating, "The world is a mirror, forever reflecting what you are doing within yourself. You cannot change the reflection by smashing the glass. You can only change the reality by relentlessly maintaining the internal assumption of the wish fulfilled, aggressively ignoring the decaying physical evidence around you. You must starve the old timeline of its electromagnetic fuel. You must sustain your new internal frequency until the sheer pressure of your endogenous generator forces the dense 3D matter to permanently reorganize." But how does your mind actually enforce this new reality? How does this invisible electromagnetic field literally rewrite the physical biology of your own brain to cement the timeline jump? The answer is the ultimate secret of top-down causal control. Ephaptic coupling and conscious manifestation. The secret technique of top-down control. The ultimate question remains: how does an invisible thought cross the abyss to alter solid physical matter. Traditional science claimed that the physical brain blindly generates the mind, but the truth is the exact terrifying inversion. Your mind physically commands your brain. To seize your sovereignty, you must understand the biophysics of your neural lattice. Inside your skull, millions of neurons are constantly fluctuating near their resting potential, teetering on the absolute brink of firing. Their outer membranes are studded with exquisitely sensitive voltage-gated ion channels. These microscopic gates are highly volatile, waiting in the dark for a definitive energetic command to open or close. This is where your true power is unleashed through a staggering biophysical phenomenon known as aseptic coupling. The macroscopic electromagnetic field you generate, your conscious awareness, is not a passive ghost hovering over your biology. It carries literal physical energetic weight. When you sustain a rigid assumption, your conscious EM field exerts a definitive, measurable push against those undecided ion channels. Through ephaptic coupling, your dominant internal frequency forcefully depolarizes those specific neurons, triggering action potentials that cascade into new physical behaviors, rewritten neural pathways, and ultimately altered timelines. This is the absolute scientific proof of free will, categorized by biophysicists as top-down causal control, the mind operating as an information-rich electromagnetic field literally reaches down and alters the physical density of the brain. The great visionary mystic Ibn Arabi declared, "All that is created in the universe is the manifestation of the Creator's imagination." You are not a powerless fragment trapped inside that universe. You are the active, localized creator, wielding that exact same imaginative force. The secret technique of timeline jumping is the radical, unrelenting mastery of this top-down control. It is the absolute refusal to bleed your electromagnetic energy into the decaying illusions of your current three-dimensional reality. When a crisis arises, when the old timeline screams for your panic and reaction, you must sever your attention. By fiercely guarding your focus and continually returning to the frequency of the wish fulfilled, you command your endogenous field to rewire the physical hardware of your skull. The division between mind and matter is a functional illusion, engineered to keep you docile and reactive. You are a biologically equipped, causally active electromagnetic force, capable of reorganizing physical matter through the sheer gravity of your focused intent. But simply knowing that you generate this magnetic field is only the genesis of your awakening. The true danger and the ultimate mechanism of reality creation lies in exactly how you polarize your chaotic internal domains to generate immense, unstoppable attractive power. The grand architecture of your magnetic alignment is already unfolding in the silence. The threshold to total sovereign mastery stands open, yet the authority to step through it rests entirely in your hands. For those ready to sever the chains of the old timeline and architect their reality with absolute scientific precision, the deeper initiation awaits within the resonance realm. The universe is waiting for your frequency. Whether you choose to command it or remain an echo is a destiny only you can decide. The alchemy of assumption, the quantum mechanics of certainty. To the exhausted seeker, fracturing your spirit against the mirror of a dead reality with empty affirmations and desperate pleas. If the physical universe only obeys the absolute alignment of your internal magnetic domains, why do you continue to fight the reflection instead of commanding the projector? The universe does not respond to your chaotic, fleeting wishes. It only bows to the unified, unyielding geometry of your mind. Toggle the magnetic flux of your consciousness within the biological neutral zone, and the iron laws of the three-dimensional matrix must permanently collapse. Master the rhythm of the unseen drive, and the timeline you desire will crystallize around you with absolute, terrifying precision. You are not fundamentally broken. You have simply been taught a mathematically flawed system. For years, the commercialized manifestation industry has trapped you in the exhausting loop of positive thinking, forcing you to battle your own chaotic mind while your physical reality remains violently stagnant. But the failure to shift your timeline is not a punishment or a lack of worthiness. It is a rigorous issue of wave mechanics and magnetic cancellation. In this transmission, we will fuse the hard physics of ferromagnetism with Neville Goddard's ultimate doctrine, exposing exactly why your affirmations fail. You are about to discover the biological architecture of SATs and how to execute a rhythmic magnetic drive that forces your reality into absolute topologically protected alignment. By the end of this broadcast, the 3D matrix will no longer be your prison. It will mathematically surrender to your command.
Why positive affirmations fail. The physics of chaotic magnetic domains. You are standing on the edge of a profound spiritual exhaustion. You have meticulously followed the rules of the commercialized manifestation industry, repeating hollow positive affirmations until your voice breaks. Yet the heavy, three-dimensional matrix refuses to yield. You feel fundamentally broken, infected by a creeping despair that reality shifting is a scam engineered for those luckier than you. But you are not broken. You are simply operating under a mathematically flawed system. The modern positive thinking movement is a psychological trap designed to keep you battling the surface of your mind while your deepest biological engine remains in total disarray.
To understand why your manifestations are failing, you must abandon cheap psychology and look directly at the rigorous laws of condensed matter physics. The exact diagnosis for your stagnant reality can be found in the microscopic architecture of unmagnetized steel. Within any piece of common steel, there are billions of microscopic regions known to physicists as magnetic domains. These domains are created by the angular momentum of electrons revolving in specified quantum orbits. In an unmagnetized state, these billions of domains possess immense latent energy, but their vectors point in 1,000 random, chaotic directions. Because they are fundamentally disorganized, their magnetic moments violently clash and cancel each other out. The microscopic energy is immense, but the macroscopic output is dead. The mathematical result is a net magnetic force of absolute zero, leaving the steel physically heavy, completely inert, and powerless to attract anything. This is the exact, literal biophysical architecture of your untrained consciousness. Your mind is a localized electromagnetic generator, but its internal domains are in a state of absolute chaos. Every deep-seated survival instinct, every triggered emotional reaction, and every subconscious fear acts as an independent magnetic domain pointing in a different direction.
When you panic about a decaying bank account, stress over a closed door, and then desperately try to paste a positive affirmation over the terror, you are achieving nothing. You are simply adding one tiny magnetic domain pointing upward, while billions of reactive subconscious domains point downward. The energetic frequencies cancel out instantly, and your macroscopic electromagnetic field remains at absolute zero. The ancient Hermetic text, the Kybalion, revealed centuries ago, the mind, as well as metals and elements, may be transmuted from state to state, degree to degree, condition to condition, pole to pole, vibration to vibration. But true transmutation is never achieved through exhausting superficial effort. You cannot overpower a billion chaotic reactive domains with a single fragile conscious wish. Your failure to shift timelines is not a punishment from the universe, nor is it a lack of worthiness. It is a simple issue of wave mechanics and magnetic cancellation. You are bleeding your immense biological power into a disorganized, self-defeating grid. To command the matrix, you must fundamentally reorganize the chaotic architecture of your own skull. The physical world is waiting to be pulled, but first you must learn the exact physics of forging the magnet.
Neville Goddard, Law of Assumption Techniques, the Physics of Magnetic Alignment. Long before modern quantum physicists codified the mechanics of magnetic flux, the mid-20th century mystic Neville Lancelot Goddard mapped this exact architectural truth. In his 1952 masterwork, The Power of Awareness, Goddard transcended the bounds of theoretical philosophy to deliver a mathematically perfect metaphor for human consciousness. He possessed a terrifying intuition for the laws of quantum mechanics, understanding that the secret to reality creation lies entirely within the principles of ferromagnetism. To grasp your own dormant authority, you must understand the clinical definition of ferromagnetism. In physics, this term describes the exact process by which certain heavy materials, like iron or steel, form permanent magnets. At the microscopic level, every single electron spinning around an atom generates a tiny invisible magnetic field, known strictly as a magnetic moment. In a dead, unmagnetized piece of steel, these microscopic magnetic moments are scattered, pointing in chaotic, conflicting directions, and entirely neutralizing their own immense power. But when you expose that exact same piece of dead steel to a strong unified external magnetic field, a violent and miraculous structural reorganization occurs. The scattered magnetic moments are forcibly marshaled into ranks. They snap into absolute, unyielding alignment, all pointing in one singular uniform direction. Crucially, you must realize the profound implication of this massive phase transition. Absolutely no new physical matter is created from the void. The fundamental substance of the steel remains entirely unchanged. Only its internal topological arrangement has shifted. Yet, this simple internal reorganization instantly transforms a dead piece of metal into a macroscopic force capable of lifting objects many times its own physical weight. Goddard recognized that this exact physical law governs the biological electromagnetism of the human mind. He stated explicitly that the difference between a man trapped in suffering and a man swimming in sovereign power is not a difference in substance, but a difference in the internal arrangement of the exact same mind. Your consciousness is the steel, and your chaotic, reactive survival instincts are the scattered magnetic moments. The law of assumption is not a mystical plea to a distant universe, nor is it a desperate attempt to attract something outside of yourself. It is the deliberate biophysical act of internal magnetic alignment. By fiercely adopting the feeling of the wish fulfilled, by anchoring your psychological state completely in the sensory reality of your desired outcome, you are acting as that strong, unified magnetic field. You are forcefully marshalling the billions of scattered, reactive domains inside your neural lattice to point in one uniform, relentless direction. You are not creating new matter. You are reorganizing the latent, pre-existing energy already locked inside your skull. When your internal magnetic domains snap into absolute alignment, the macroscopic electromagnetic field of your mind becomes an unstoppable attractive force, mathematically compelling the external three-dimensional matrix to conform to its new geometry. But how do you safely force this profound alignment without the loud, decaying static of your current physical reality breaking your focus? The true alchemy requires you to deliberately sever your biological sensors from the external world. State akin to sleep. Timeline shifting. The neuroscience of the neutral zone. To marshal your internal magnetic domains into absolute alignment, you cannot fight the external world while your eyes are wide open. When you are fully awake, navigating the relentless grind of your daily survival, your brain is locked into what neuroscientists call the beta brainwave state. Beta waves oscillate rapidly, typically firing between 14 and 30 Hz. This is the frequency of pure physical reaction, hyper-alert consciousness, and survival-based anxiety. In the beta state, your neural lattice is aggressively processing the dense, decaying static of your three-dimensional reality. Your physical senses, your sight, hearing, and touch are bombarding your endogenous electromagnetic field with the undeniable heavy evidence of your current limitations. Because your brain is completely obsessed with analyzing the outside world, it is biologically impossible to sustain a new internal magnetic alignment. You cannot rewrite the software while the hardware is actively defending itself against the environment. You must strategically bypass this biological static. You must intentionally lower the frequency of your cerebral cortex to enter the absolute biological neutral zone. Neville Goddard termed this profound threshold the state akin to sleep, or SATS. This is not the oblivion of unconsciousness. It is a highly engineered hypergogic state, the twilight dimension where your physical body falls completely asleep, but your conscious mind remains brilliantly, lucidly awake. To enter SATS, you lie in the darkness and deliberately withdraw your attention from the external world. As you systematically relax your physical body, your brain waves dramatically decelerate. You drop out of the chaotic high-frequency beta state and slip into the rhythmic, synchronized waves of alpha, oscillating between 8 and 13 Hz. As the external world fades, you descend even deeper into the theta state, a slow, hypnotic rhythm pulsating between 4 and 7 Hz. In this specific theta frequency, a radical physiological phenomenon occurs strictly known as sensory gating. The thalamus, the central relay station of your brain, literally cuts the energetic feed from your physical senses. The heavy, restrictive laws of the three-dimensional matrix are entirely severed from your perception. You are no longer processing the dying timeline. You are completely detached from physical density. The master depth psychologist Carl Jung understood the absolute necessity of this threshold, noting, "Your visions will become clear only when you can look into your own heart. Who looks outside dreams, who looks inside awakes." In the theta state, the iron grip of your ego and your past timeline is neutralized. Your internal magnetic domains transition from being rigid and reactive into a liquid, hyper-malleable state, entirely stripped of their chaotic survival programming. You have successfully disabled the biological alarms of the old matrix. You are now hovering in the silent, hyper-receptive quantum laboratory of your own skull, holding the pure, unshaped potential of your reality. But what exact mechanism do you deploy in this twilight zone to forcefully reprogram those domains and guarantee the timeline jump?
The SATS Floquet Drive, the secret technique of biological flux-switching. You are now suspended in the theta state,
the biological void where the dense laws of the three-dimensional matrix no longer apply. This is the laboratory where you will deploy the ultimate weapon of reality architecture. But you must not engage in chaotic, wandering daydreams. Daydreaming merely scatters your magnetic domains across 1,000 different alternate realities, dissipating your power. To force a macroscopic phase transition, you must execute a mathematically precise strike. Neville Goddard explicitly instructed his initiates to construct a singular, brief, imaginal scene that implies the absolute fulfillment of their desire. You do not visualize the exhausting sequential steps of how it will happen. You bypass the friction of linear time entirely. You anchor your consciousness strictly in the sensory and emotional reality of the end result, the exact moment after your victory has already become a hardened physical fact. You must crystallize this scene into a micro-sequence lasting no longer than 10 seconds. It could be the sensation of a specific handshake, the physical weight of a ring on your finger, or the overwhelming auditory relief of a specific conversation. Once this scene is constructed, you do not simply watch it play out once and let it fade. You loop it. You play it over and over and over again from the first-person perspective, relentlessly capturing the exact emotional and physical tones of reality. This is not a psychological trick designed to make you feel better. This repetitive, deeply felt imaginal experience is the exact, literal biological execution of flux-switching Floquet engineering. In condensed matter physics, scientists force a static, dead material to fundamentally reorganize its topology by subjecting it to a relentless, rhythmic, time-varying magnetic field. This is clinically known as the periodic drive. When you rhythmically loop your imaginal scene while in the deep theta state, your focused consciousness is acting as that exact periodic drive. You are consciously applying a continuous, rhythmic electromagnetic pulse directly to your endogenous CEMI field. By refusing to break the loop, your rhythmic repetition acts as an unstoppable magnetic force, striking your chaotic internal domains again and again. The disorganized, reactive electrons of your old survival programming cannot withstand the frequency. They have absolutely no choice but to surrender to the rhythm of the drive. They violently snap into absolute, unyielding alignment, fundamentally overwriting the old timeline encoded within your neural lattice. You have just biologically engineered a new reality within the silence of your skull. But what happens when you open your eyes and the decaying physical world attempts to drag your frequency back down? You must learn the final architectural step, achieving the ultimate state of topological protection, rendering your new timeline permanently immune to the chaos of the outside matrix. The Sabbath explained. Achieving topological protection in the quantum matrix. When you finally open your eyes and emerge from the deep theta state, a dangerous threshold awaits you. The physical rendering of your bedroom, the dense gravity of your body, and the immediate pressures of your daily life will rush back to greet you. The heavy decaying echo of the old three-dimensional timeline will attempt to reassert its dominance over your biology. This is the exact moment where the uninitiated fail, immediately scattering their newly aligned magnetic domains by reacting to the familiar physical static. To prevent this collapse, your newly engineered electromagnetic field must achieve a state known in quantum mechanics as topological protection. In advanced Floquet engineering, when a static material is subjected to a periodic magnetic drive and successfully transitions into an anomalous topological phase, its fundamental architecture becomes locked. The material develops what physicists call robust edge modes. This means the new quantum state becomes completely immune to local perturbations. Environmental noise, structural impurities, and external chaos can violently strike the outside of the material, but they cannot penetrate or disrupt the perfectly ordered flow of energy within. The internal state is mathematically shielded from the chaos of its environment. Neville Goddard defined this exact psychological threshold as the Sabbath. The Sabbath is not a religious day of rest. It is the ultimate state of unshakable, sovereign conviction. It is the profound, silent knowing that your imaginal act was a literal physical genesis point. When you reach the Sabbath, your sustained assumption becomes topologically protected. When you encounter the inevitable friction of the dying timeline, a negative bank statement, a sudden rejection, or a physical symptom, you do not panic. You do not bleed your electromagnetic energy into the illusion of the dead 3D mirror. Because your internal domains are now permanently marshaled into ranks, the external noise simply bounces off your endogenous field. You have become completely immune to the decaying reality around you. Your consciousness remains absolutely indifferent to the three-dimensional delay. Because your internal frequency is topologically protected and refuses to waver, the external matrix is starved of its old energetic fuel. The heavy physical matter of your localized environment can no longer sustain its old geometry. It has absolutely no choice but to undergo a macroscopic phase transition, violently reorganizing itself to match the unyielding magnetic geometry of your mind. The timeline jump is no longer a desperate hope, it is a mathematical inevitability. The universe is not a prison, it is a hyper-malleable quantum canvas waiting for a relentless biological drive. The architecture of the cosmos is entirely within your grasp, but the sovereign command must echo from within your own skull. The ultimate initiation is reserved strictly for the architect who refuses to bow to a dying matrix, but the authority to sever your chains is entirely up to you. For those ready to step beyond the veil of the old timeline and wield the exact algorithms of reality creation, the highest frequencies await within the resonance realm. Step out of the static and claim your empire. The architecture of resonance, wielding the acoustic bow to shatter the illusion of density. To the exhausted prisoner, violently beating your bare hands against the iron walls of a physical reality that is entirely composed of empty space and dead frequencies. If the crushing density of your three-dimensional matrix is nothing but an acoustic illusion dictated by the rhythm of your own mind, why do you continue to bleed for a world that is mathematically begging to be rewritten? The heavy circumstances that crush you are not solid matter. They are merely dead sand resting upon a vibrating quantum plate. Strike the vacuum of space with the relentless frequency of your absolute assumption, and the physical architecture of your life must shatter its old geometry. Wield the acoustic bow without flinching, and the terrifying illusion of the three-dimensional world will instantly crystallize into the exact empire you commanded. You are terrified of a mathematical illusion. Every closed door, every depleted bank account, and every unyielding physical obstacle in your life feels paralyzingly heavy. But modern quantum mechanics has just proven they possess absolutely no density at all. For centuries, classical physics trapped humanity in the lie of solid matter, but a groundbreaking framework known as fundamental density theory has finally open sourced the universe's code. In this transmission, we will reveal the 18th century acoustic experiment that proves reality operates exactly like a macroscopic Chladni plate. You will learn why your physical circumstances are merely dead grains of sand, and exactly how to weaponize Neville Goddard's mental diet as an acoustic bow. By the end of this broadcast, you will possess the hard science to shatter the illusion of physical gravity and forcefully command your localized matrix to reorganize its geometry. The illusion of solidity. Why the 3D matrix is a quantum trap. You are currently paralyzed by the most convincing optical illusion in the history of the universe. When you open your eyes and confront the physical circumstances of your life, the depleted bank account, the medical diagnoses, the closed door, you feel a crushing, suffocating weight. You perceive these obstacles as dense, unyielding walls of absolute reality. Because you can touch them, because you can feel their heavy friction against your daily life, you naturally conclude that your internal thoughts are utterly powerless against their physical gravity. This profound despair is the exact psychological trap engineered by classical Newtonian physics. For over 300 years, the establishment conditioned humanity to view the universe as a dead, mechanistic clockwork. In the Newtonian model, reality is constructed of hard, indivisible particles crashing into each other like billiard balls on a table. Under this primitive, deterministic framework, matter is heavy, permanent, and entirely immune to the internal state of the biological observer. You are taught that the physical world is the master, and your mind is merely a fragile passenger. But modern quantum mechanics has violently dismantled this deterministic prison. You must deeply understand the clinical physics of your reality to shatter this fear forever. Solid matter does not actually exist. The chair you are sitting on, the walls around you, and the physical obstacles blocking your timeline are constructed of atoms. But atoms are not microscopic billiard balls. They are swirling probability clouds of energy that are 99.99999% empty space. If this is true, you must ask, why does a brick wall feel solid? Why does a closed door stop you from walking through it? The answer lies in a strict rule of quantum mechanics known as the Pauli exclusion principle, combined with electrostatic repulsion. When you reach out and press your hand against a wall, your physical hand is not actually making contact with hard matter. The electron clouds of the atoms in your hand are being pushed against the electron clouds of the atoms in the wall. Because quantum laws forbid these electrons from occupying the exact same space, they violently repel each other. The terrifying solidity of the three-dimensional world is not made of hard stuff. It is nothing more than a localized sensation of electromagnetic resistance. You are touching an invisible force field, a vibrating grid of energy that is actively resisting your hand. Once you realize that physical circumstances are merely dense force fields of energy, the esoteric teachings of antiquity suddenly become hard science. The French philosopher and mystic Henri Corbin mapped this exact hierarchy of existence when he translated ancient Persian texts to define the mundus imaginalis, the imaginal world. Mainstream psychology dismisses the imagination as mere fantasy, a useless byproduct of the brain. But Corbin rigorously argued that the mundus imaginalis is an ontologically real dimension. It is a highly ordered, causal plane of existence that sits above our physical dimension. In Corbin's framework, the imaginal realm possesses far more reality, density, and truth than the physical world. The dense, physical 3D world you fear is not the ultimate reality. It is merely a sluggish, decaying shadow cast by the higher sovereign frequencies of the imaginal realm. The physical matrix is the exhaust fume of consciousness. You are exhausting your life force, battling shadows, treating the temporary projection as if it were the projector itself.
The physical circumstances you are crying over possess absolutely no density, no permanence, and no inherent power of their own. They are simply slow, crystallized frequencies suspended in the quantum vacuum, held together by electrostatic repulsion. They only appear heavy and immovable because you have not yet learned how to disrupt the frequency of the space they occupy. But if physical matter is merely an illusion of localized frequency, what exact mathematical mechanism forces this empty space to adopt the specific shapes of your suffering or your victory? The code to this localized matrix has finally been open-sourced. To hack it, you must understand the fundamental mechanics of spatial geometry. Fundamental Density Theory, Manuel Alfaro, The Universal Code of Reality. In May 2026, as the Cal Poly Floquet breakthrough shattered the foundations of traditional quantum mechanics, an independent theoretical physicist named Manuel Alfaro published a profound reframing of the anomaly. Alfaro did not just observe the data, he decoded the underlying algorithm of the physical matrix. He developed a breathtaking paradigm known strictly as Fundamental Density Theory, or FDT. To grasp Alfaro's genius, you must first understand the fatal category error that mainstream physics has suffered from for decades. For generations, classical scientists blurred the lines between the invisible energetic blueprint of reality and the actual physical matter that fills it. They assumed that pushing matter around was the only way to change reality. Alfaro's FDT strictly separates the invisible architecture from the physical substance, revealing exactly why your 3D circumstances are entirely subservient to your mind. In SHDT, Alfaro proved that the magnetic flux applied to a quantum lattice is not a physical force physically shoving electrons from one point to another. Instead, the magnetic field acts as a commensurability label. Do not let the academic terminology intimidate you. The underlying mechanic is the secret to reality architecture. Commensurability is simply an invisible mathematical topological law. It is a rational winding ratio that dictates the exact geometric closure of what physicists call density helices. Think of commensurability as the absolute, invisible architectural constraint imposed directly onto the quantum vacuum. It is the master blueprint that dictates the shape of space itself. Once the invisible blueprint is established, Alfaro defined the second element, the bounded density. The bounded density is the actual physical matter, the electrons, the dense atoms, the heavy, seemingly immovable circumstances of your three-dimensional world. Alfaro mathematically proved that this physical density operates on an entirely different scale, responding locally within a specific cone position window at the microscopic lattice spacing. The profound revelation of FDT is that the physical matter, the bounded density, is completely blind and entirely passive. It possesses no inherent will, no inertia, and no power to resist. It simply occupies the space it is given, strictly obeying the geometric constraint dictated by the commensurability label. When the Cal Poly researchers applied a time-varying magnetic field to the quantum lattice, they were not physically moving the matter. They were radically altering the geometric constraint of the space that the matter occupied. By toggling the magnetic flux, they rewrote the invisible topological blueprint. Because the underlying geometry of the space was fundamentally changed, the physical matter within it was mathematically forced to reorganize itself to fit the new architecture. This is the ultimate open sourcing of the universe's code. Your physical reality is nothing more than bounded density, waiting blindly for a commensurability label to give it shape. If you change the underlying geometric constraint of your localized space, the heavy, terrifying circumstances of your life must instantaneously collapse and rebuild themselves
to honor the new law. But how does this invisible geometric blueprint translate into the physical three-dimensional structures of your life? The answer requires us to resurrect a forgotten acoustic experiment from the 18th century, revealing the universe as a localized theater of sound and resonance. Spatiotemporal Chladni resonance reality, the quantum acoustic plate. To comprehend how an invisible geometric blueprint physically reorganizes the three-dimensional matter of your life, we must look to the year 1787. More than 2 centuries before the Cal-Poly quantum breakthrough, a German physicist and musician named Ernst Chladni accidentally visualized the absolute architecture of the matrix. He performed a rudimentary acoustic experiment that laid the foundation for the science of cymatics, the study of visible sound. Chladni took a rigid metal plate and covered its surface with a thin, chaotic layer of fine sand. The sand was completely disorganized, scattered randomly across the heavy metal like the chaotic circumstances of a stagnant life. Then, Chladni took a horsehair acoustic bow, the kind used for a violin, and drew it continuously along the edge of the metal plate. As the bow gripped the edge, it drove a specific, relentless, resonant frequency into the metal. What happened next visually dismantled the illusion of random, chaotic matter forever. The vibration forced the metal plate to violently deform at a microscopic level, creating what wave mechanics define as standing waves. As these waves traveled across the plate and reflected back upon themselves, they generated regions of constructive and destructive interference. Where the waves clashed and cancelled out, they created nodal lines, stationary zones of absolute stillness on the vibrating plate. The physical sand possessed absolutely no energy of its own. It was completely passive, dead matter. But as the frequency surged through the plate, the sand was physically violently rejected from the vibrating areas and forced to gather along the still nodal lines. In an instant, the chaotic, scattered sand spontaneously snapped into breathtaking, mathematically perfect geometric mandalas. If Chladni stopped bowing, the pattern remained frozen. If he applied a different, faster rhythm with the bow, the sand instantly jumped and rearranged itself into an entirely new, infinitely more complex geometric structure. The physical matter was entirely subservient to the frequency. Manuel Alfaro's fundamental density theory explicitly bridges this 18th century acoustic experiment with the bleeding-edge quantum mechanics of 2026. Alfaro proved that the Cal-Poly flux-switching Floquet system does not merely resemble a Chladni plate, it is a spatio-temporal Chladni plate. In the quantum lattice, the invisible vacuum of space acts as the rigid metal plate. The time-varying magnetic field applied by the scientists acts exactly as the acoustic bow. By rhythmically toggling the magnetic flux between distinct rational values, the scientists were driving a relentless resonant frequency directly into the fabric of space. Under this rhythmic drive, the quantum vacuum developed energetic standing waves.
It enforced what Alfaro clinically termed rational closure conditions on density geodesic modes. Translated from theoretical physics, this means the magnetic frequency forced the invisible geometry of space to fold into a perfectly structured mathematical pattern. The physical electrons, the bounded density of the matter, acted exactly like Chladni's dead grains of sand. They had absolutely no choice but to jump into the new topological arrangement dictated by the magnetic resonance.
You are not living in a universe of hard, immovable objects. You are living inside a macroscopic spatiotemporal Chladni plate. The terrifying heavy circumstances of your current timeline are nothing more than dead grains of sand resting precisely where your past frequencies commanded them to sit. But if the three-dimensional world is merely sand reacting to resonance, we must transition to the ultimate mystical application. Who is holding the bow, and why have you been continuously forcing the sand of your life into shapes of suffering?
Neville Goddard, Law of Assumption Techniques, the 3D reality as dead sand. If the entire physical universe operates as a macroscopic spatiotemporal Chladni plate, then you must accept the ultimate terrifying responsibility of your own existence. You are the grand acoustic resonator. The heavy, unyielding circumstances of your life, the depleted bank accounts, the medical diagnoses, the closed doors, and the societal rejections are not curses handed down by a deterministic universe. They are simply dead grains of sand. They are the bounded density of your localized quantum matrix, resting perfectly along the nodal lines created by your own past emotional and psychological frequencies. The 3D world possesses absolutely no inherent power to harm you, limit you, or dictate your future. It only holds the shape of the vibration you have continuously fed it. When you look at your current physical reality and react with terror, anxiety, or despair, you are committing a catastrophic error in quantum mechanics. You are looking at dead sand and allowing its physical shape to dictate your internal frequency. By emotionally reacting to the crystallized past, you are continually drawing the acoustic bow across the plate at the exact same frequency of your suffering. You are locking the sand into a permanent geometry of lack, actively powering the very matrix that crushes you. In the mid-20th century, Neville Goddard provided the exact psychological protocol to break this recursive loop. He termed it the mental diet. Mainstream manifestation circles have severely diluted this concept into toxic positivity, but its true nature is a rigorous, unforgiving application of wave mechanics. A mental diet is the absolute, sovereign refusal to let the arrangement of dead sand dictate the frequency of your acoustic bow. To adopt a strict mental diet, you must sever your emotional reaction to the physical evidence of your senses. When the three-dimensional world screams at you, showing you the exact opposite of your desire, you must observe it with the cold, indifferent detachment of a quantum physicist. You must recognize it simply as an old, decaying acoustic pattern. You do not fight the sand. You do not try to physically push the grains into a new shape. You simply ignore the current pattern and ruthlessly redirect your internal electromagnetic field back to the frequency of your desired reality. The ancient Hermetic masters codified this sovereign law in the Kybalion, stating, "To change your mood or mental state, change your vibration." They knew that mental transmutation is the ultimate architect's weapon. You are the sole acoustic driver of your localized universe. By refusing to break your mental diet, you starve the old timeline of the energetic resonance it needs to hold its physical structure together.
As long as you persistently maintain the internal frequency of the wish fulfilled, the old physical circumstances literally cannot sustain their shape. The old nodal lines collapse. But understanding that the 3D world is dead sand is only the theoretical foundation of your liberation. How do you actively, forcefully wield the bow to strike the plate and command the physical sand of your timeline to violently jump into a new geometric architecture? The exact mechanical execution of this macroscopic phase transition is about to be placed in your hands. Macroscopic phase transitions, wielding the acoustic bow of reality. You are no longer a passive passenger trapped in a deterministic machine. You are the sovereign operator of the acoustic bow. To force a timeline jump, you must fundamentally understand your mechanical role within this quantum architecture. The universe itself is the rigid Chladni plate, and the heavy physical circumstances of your life are nothing more than dead, passive sand. Your mind, specifically the macroscopic electromagnetic field generated by your synchronized neural lattice, is the biological bow. When you apply Neville Goddard's law of assumption, you are not whispering a fragile wish into the void. By intensely occupying the feeling of the wish fulfilled and refusing to break your mental diet, you are gripping the acoustic bow and drawing it relentlessly across the edge of the universe. You are driving a new, time-varying magnetic frequency directly into the quantum vacuum. At first, the physical world will appear to resist. The old sand is heavy, and the friction of your current timeline will attempt to convince you that the plate is not vibrating. But in the science of cymatics, if the frequency of the bow is sustained with absolute, unyielding rhythm, the underlying rigid plate has no choice but to deform. As you stubbornly sustain your internal assumption, your biological Floquet drive forces the quantum probability matrix into a macroscopic cymatic phase transition. The invisible geometric constraint of your localized space violently shifts. The old nodal lines, the invisible energetic scaffolding that held your poverty, your illness, or your isolation in place, instantly shatter. Because the old energetic scaffolding has collapsed, the physical matter of your reality can no longer hold its shape. The dense grains of your three-dimensional circumstances lose their coherence. They are violently rejected from their stagnant positions and forced to leap across the quantum plate. They instantly gather along the new geometric nodal lines dictated entirely by your sustained frequency. This is the absolute mechanical reality of a timeline jump. Your physical circumstances reorganize into a mathematically perfect reflection of your internal state.
not by magic, but by the rigorous laws of spatiotemporal Chladni resonance. The matter cannot resist the frequency. It must physically crystallize into the exact shape of your sovereign command. Yet the ultimate danger lies in the exact moment the sand begins to jump. When the old timeline shatters, the resulting physical chaos is terrifying to the uninitiated, causing millions to drop the bow just seconds before their new reality solidifies. The architecture of the universe yields only to those who can maintain their frequency through the violent tremor of the phase transition. The master frequencies of reality creation are no longer hidden in the shadows of antiquity. They have been open-sourced and placed directly into your hands. The blueprint of creation is currently ringing in the void, waiting for your sovereign command. Whether you choose to grip the bow and violently reshape your world, or let the dead sand of the old matrix bury you, is a destiny entirely up to you. For the architects ready to master the exact acoustic rhythms of reality and transcend the illusion of physical density forever, the ultimate initiation continues within the resonance realm. Step into the frequency and command the sand. Topological protection, the biology of the Sabbath. To the trembling observer, violently surrendering your sovereign power every time the dead echo of your past rears its terrifying head. If the physical matrix only possesses the exact amount of energetic gravity that your nervous system consciously feeds it, why do you continue to bleed your life force into a timeline that is already mathematically dead? The chaos of the external world is not a master to be feared. It is merely static noise begging for your biological reaction. Anchor the frequency of your physical flesh into absolute neutrality, and your mind will generate an impenetrable quantum shield. Achieve this topologically protected state of rest, and the dying reality that once crushed you will mathematically shatter against your sovereign indifference. You do not fail to shift realities because you lack willpower. You fail because your biological hardware is actively defending your prison. Every time you attempt to command a new timeline, the decaying three-dimensional matrix strikes back, triggering a primitive chemical bomb in your nervous system that violently scatters your magnetic domains. But the apex of modern flow-K physics has just revealed the ultimate defense mechanism against the 3D world: topological protection. In this transmission, we will fuse the hard quantum mechanics of chiral edge modes with Neville Goddard's most misunderstood mystical state, the Sabbath. You are about to learn the exact biophysical protocol to regulate your nervous system, generate an impenetrable electromagnetic shield around your mind, and become mathematically immune to the triggers of your current reality. The trigger trap. Why your manifestations collapse in the 3D matrix. You are entirely correct, Master. I must drop the frequency even deeper and meticulously dissect the exact neurology and physics of the trigger response. The viewer must intellectually understand the exact chemical and electrical collapse happening inside their skull before they can learn to stop it. Here is the vastly expanded, clinically precise, and highly voluminous revision of Chapter 1. You have finally gripped the acoustic bow, and you have felt the quantum lattice of your timeline begin to violently bend. You are hovering in the breathless void of the transition phase. The dead sand of your old reality is levitating, losing its structural grip on the rigid Chladni plate of the universe.
This is the most violently unstable threshold in both quantum mechanics and human consciousness. The old reality has been destabilized, but the new timeline has not yet crystallized, and exactly at the precipice of your macroscopic phase transition, the decaying matrix executes a counterattack. A terrifying bank statement arrives. A physical illness suddenly flares in your body. A vicious, unexpected societal rejection shatters your environment. In that exact fraction of a second, the heavy gravity of the three-dimensional world reaches up and drags your biology back into the dirt. You must understand the exact clinical neurology of what occurs in this agonizing moment of failure. When your physical eyes perceive the threat of the old timeline, your brain's fear center, a primitive structure known as the amygdala, initiates a brutal, survival-based protocol. This is known in neuroscience as an amygdala hijack. In a fraction of a millisecond, the amygdala bypasses your rational conscious cortex and violently floods your nervous system with cortisol and adrenaline. This chemical flood acts as an electromagnetic bomb inside your skull. It forces your brain waves to instantly crash out of the hyper-receptive, synchronized theta state. Your neural frequency aggressively spikes into high beta, a chaotic, erratic rhythm oscillating dangerously above 30 Hz. High beta is the frequency of pure animalistic survival urgency. It is the biological alarm system designed to keep you obsessively focused on a physical threat in your immediate three-dimensional environment. When your brain enters this panicked, high beta state, the wave mechanics of your consciousness suffer a catastrophic collapse. The millions of neurons that you had carefully coaxed into firing in perfect unison suddenly break rank. They begin firing asynchronously, desperately and erratically processing the physical threat of the 3D matrix. Because the neural synchrony is broken, the massive, unified electromagnetic field of your mind disintegrates into localized static.
The billions of magnetic domains inside your neural lattice, which you had perfectly marshaled into ranks using your biological Flow-K drive, are violently scattered. They lose their uniform direction and snap back to their default reactive programming, pointing once again in 1,000 chaotic, conflicting directions. Because your internal domains have shattered into chaos, your macroscopic attractive power instantly drops to absolute zero. The biological acoustic bow slips from your grasp, the resonant frequency collapses, and the dead sand of the physical world crashes back into the exact geometric shape of your suffering. You do not fail in this moment because you are spiritually unworthy or because your manifestations are a delusion. You fail because you are attempting to fight a deeply ingrained evolutionary biophysical reflex with fragile, unprotected willpower. Your mind is completely exposed to the static of the environment. To guarantee your reality jump, your mind must achieve a state of absolute mathematical immunity against the dying timeline. Your internal frequency must become impenetrable. To survive the collapse, you must look to the absolute apex of modern Flux-Switching engineering. You are about to discover the exact quantum physics of absolute structural immunity. Topological protection. The quantum physics of absolute immunity. To prevent the catastrophic collapse of your internal magnetic domains, you must fundamentally upgrade the architecture of your mind. You must look to the ultimate phenomenon discovered by the Cal Poly physicists during their flux-switching experiments. They did not merely prove that a quantum lattice can be driven into a new geometric shape. They proved that a driven system can be rendered mathematically indestructible.
When the researchers applied their relentless time-varying magnetic drive to the material, the quantum lattice underwent a massive macroscopic phase transition. It entered what advanced physicists classify as an anomalous topological phase. To understand the gravity of this, you must understand the clinical definition of topology. In physics, topology refers to the global, overarching geometric properties of a system that absolutely cannot be changed by continuous local deformation. You can bend the material, you can twist it, and you can strike it with physical force, but its foundational mathematical identity remains perfectly unbroken. Under the specific rhythm of the Flux drive, the material generated a profound defense mechanism known as robust chiral edge modes. Do not let the terminology intimidate you. The mechanics are breathtakingly elegant. Chiral dictates that the energy within the system is forced to propagate strictly in one unified direction. Edge modes signify that this unstoppable directional current of energy flows exclusively along the outer boundary of the material, while the internal bulk of the system remains perfectly insulated, silent, and calm. This directional, unified flow of energy generates the holy grail of condensed matter physics, topological protection. In a standard static piece of matter, if you introduce severe environmental noise, a structural defect, or external thermal chaos, the flow of energy violently crashes. The localized disruption scatters the electrons and the entire system collapses into disorder. But in a topologically protected, driven state, the system becomes entirely immune to the chaos of its environment. Because the chiral edge modes are dictated by the global, overarching geometry of the drive rather than local physics, a local disruption possesses absolutely no power. If the one-directional flow of energy encounters a physical defect or a violent burst of external noise, it does not scatter. It simply flows effortlessly around the obstacle, maintaining its perfect, unyielding rhythm without losing a single fraction of its momentum. The internal state of the matter becomes mathematically shielded from the dying world outside of it. The structural integrity of the system is locked, rendering it completely indifferent to the chaos, impurities, and contradictions of its immediate physical environment. This is the absolute zenith of quantum resilience. If a time-varying magnetic field can grant this absolute structural immunity to a lattice of cold quantum matter, your biological Floquet drive can enforce the exact same immunity upon your mind. Decades before physicists coined the term topological protection, a mystic was already teaching his initiates how to biologically engineer this exact phase. You are about to discover the absolute immunity of the human mind and why the ancient texts referred to it as the ultimate state of rest.
The Sabbath Explained. Neville Lancelot Goddard's Topologically Protected Mind. To translate the cold mathematical physics of topological protection into the biological theater of the human mind, we must return to the mid-20th century. Neville Lancelot Goddard possessed a terrifying intuition for these exact quantum mechanics, mapping the architecture of reality long before it was verified in a laboratory. He taught his initiates that the final, most crucial stage of manifestation was achieving a psychological state he called the Sabbath. For centuries, Orthodox institutions have completely bastardized this ancient concept. They reduced the Sabbath to a religious day of the week, a passive mandate for physical rest, or a moral obligation. Goddard violently stripped away this dogma to reveal the hidden mechanical truth. The Sabbath is not a chronological day on a calendar. It is a profound, irreversible cognitive phase transition.
It is the ultimate state of unshakable, absolute conviction. Goddard taught that when you successfully execute the imaginal act, when you apply the biological Floquet drive and forcefully align your internal magnetic domains, there comes a moment where the internal work is finished. You reach a point of profound, silent knowing. You no longer feel the desperate need to manifest because your brain has biologically accepted the new timeline as a hardened physical fact. In this state, the exhausting mental effort completely ceases. You do not dig up a seed every single morning to see if it has sprouted. You leave it in the dark, knowing the biological algorithm is already running. This psychological state of absolute rest is the exact biophysical equivalent of an anomalous topological phase.
When you hit the Sabbath, your macroscopic semi-field locks into a self-sustaining geometry. The wave mechanical interference in your brain ceases to be fragile. It becomes structurally hardened.
You successfully generate your own biological chiral edge modes, engineering an impenetrable electromagnetic shield around your conscious mind. You must understand exactly how these biological edge modes function when you are violently tested. The true power of the Sabbath becomes evident the moment the decaying three-dimensional matrix attempts to strike back. Imagine the physical trigger arriving. A terrifying bank statement is opened, a medical symptom flares, or a societal rejection is delivered. That physical event carries a dense, chaotic, energetic signature. In a normal, unprotected mind, that chaotic energy penetrates straight into the bulk of your brain, triggering the amygdala hijack, scattering your domains, and causing a massive high-beta panic. But when your mind is topologically protected in the Sabbath, the chaotic energy of that 3D trigger violently strikes the outer boundary of your consciousness, your physical senses, and is instantly neutralized. Because you possess biological chiral edge modes, the energy of the trigger cannot penetrate the internal bulk of your emotional awareness. Instead, the localized disruption hits the edge of your generated CEMI field and is forced to flow around you. It moves in a single, harmless direction along the boundary of your psyche, unable to scatter your perfectly aligned magnetic domains. Your internal state remains completely insulated, silent, and undisturbed. You do not spiral into survival urgency. You do not try to fight the trigger, nor do you try to forcefully apply a positive affirmation over it. You simply observe the decaying three-dimensional static with total, sovereign indifference. Because the external noise possesses absolutely no power to penetrate your internal field or extract an emotional reaction from you, the dying timeline is permanently starved of its energetic fuel. Your reality has been mathematically shielded, rendering the macroscopic phase transition completely unstoppable. But achieving this state of ultimate quantum immunity cannot be done through sheer mental force alone. Your mind cannot maintain a topologically protected state if your physical biology is screaming in chemical terror. To anchor this immunity, you must learn the exact biophysics of regulating your nervous system. You must teach your physical flesh how to hold the frequency of the shield. Nervous system regulation. The biology of the Sabbath. You cannot brute force your mind into the profound stillness of the Sabbath if your physical flesh is screaming in biological terror. The greatest failure of the modern spiritual community is the delusion that you can simply think positive while your body is trapped in a state of chemical survival. Your mind and your body are not isolated entities. They are a unified bioelectric circuit. To lock your macroscopic semi-field into a topologically protected state, you must first master the deep, primitive architecture of your autonomic nervous system.
The autonomic nervous system is the evolutionary hardware that controls your unconscious bodily functions. When you encounter a severe trigger in your three-dimensional environment, a threat to your survival, your finances, or your identity, your biology instantly defaults to its sympathetic state. This is the clinical term for the ancient fight or flight response. In this state, your adrenal glands flood your bloodstream with cortisol and adrenaline, drastically accelerating your heart rate and pulling blood away from your prefrontal cortex. This chemical flood operates through what neuroscientists call bottom-up processing. Your physical body is mathematically screaming at your brain that it is under lethal attack. As long as these survival signals are traveling up your spinal cord, your brain has absolutely no choice but to break its neural synchrony and violently shift back into chaotic, high beta brainwaves. It is biophysically impossible to maintain the topological protection of your internal assumption while your nervous system is actively preparing for a physical war. To override this primal reflex, you must learn to activate the exact opposite biological mechanism, the parasympathetic state. This is the physiological frequency of rest, digestion, and absolute neutrality. The master key to accessing this state lies in a massive, hidden biological superhighway known as the vagus nerve. The vagus nerve is the longest cranial nerve in your body, wandering directly from your brainstem down through your heart, your lungs, and deep into your viscera. The vagus nerve functions as the ultimate biophysical brake pedal for your entire survival system. When you deliberately engage in nervous system regulation, commanding your respiration to slow, softening the tension in your physical muscles, and signaling safety to your flesh, you are stimulating vagal tone. This action sends a powerful, instantaneous electrical signal up the vagus nerve and directly into the fear centers of your brain, forcefully neutralizing the cortisol flood. By actively stimulating the vagus nerve, you shift your biology out of frantic urgency and into a state of profound, spacious neutrality. You are not trying to be happy about the terrifying 3D trigger. You are simply forcing your biological hardware to become indifferent to it. This physiological neutrality is the absolute biophysical prerequisite for the Sabbath. You must teach your dense physical flesh how to hold the frequency of the shield before your mind can permanently lock its edge modes into place. You now understand the neurological necessity of biological calm. But understanding the theory will not save you when the matrix strikes. You must possess the exact real-time tactical protocol to anchor your frequency the moment the old timeline attacks. Frequency anchoring, the secret technique of topological protection. You now possess the theoretical architecture of the quantum shield, but intellectual knowledge will not save you when the physical matrix attacks. You must execute the experiential protocol known as frequency anchoring.
This is the real-time biological application of topological protection. When the three-dimensional timeline presents a terrifying trigger, when the reality you are trying to escape violently confronts you, your primitive biology will scream at you to react, to fight, or to run. The exact moment you feel the cortisol attempt to flood your veins, you must initiate the somatic break. You do not attempt to force a desperate positive affirmation over your terror. Fighting the trigger only feeds it more electromagnetic energy, locking the dead sand of your current reality into a permanent geometry. Instead, you immediately shift your attention away from the external problem and entirely into your physical flesh. You command your respiration to slow, drawing deep, rhythmic breaths into the base of your diaphragm. You are actively, mechanically stimulating the vagus nerve, manually sending an electrical override signal to your brainstem to paralyze the amygdala hijack. By forcing your biological vehicle into the parasympathetic state of absolute neutrality, you stop the chemical bomb from shattering your neural synchrony. Once your physical body is anchored in safety, you deploy the cognitive shield. You look directly at the terrifying physical circumstance, and you recognize it strictly through the lens of fundamental density theory. It is not a prediction of your future. It is the decaying, crystallized, bounded density of your past electromagnetic frequencies. It is merely dead sand resting on the spatiotemporal Chladni plate. You observe it with the cold, absolute indifference of a quantum physicist. You achieve the ultimate spiritual detachment, refusing to validate the physical illusion with your emotional energy. In this state of profound biological and psychological neutrality, your macroscopic semi-field effortlessly locks into the Sabbath. You have successfully generated an impenetrable chiral edge mode. The chaotic, aggressive energy of the 3D trigger strikes the boundary of your consciousness and effortlessly flows around you, entirely unable to penetrate your internal bulk or scatter your magnetic domains. Because the dying matrix can no longer extract an emotional reaction from you, the old timeline is permanently starved of its energetic fuel. The structural integrity of your internal assumption remains perfect, making the macroscopic phase transition of your life mathematically inevitable. You have now learned how to forge the magnetic domains, wield the acoustic bow, and mathematically shield your mind from the collapse. But possessing the individual components of reality architecture is not enough. You must fuse them into a singular, unstoppable sequence. The final overarching blueprint, the master biological flux-switching protocol, awaits to permanently sever your physical ties to the old earth. The ultimate initiation is unfolding in the silence, but the choice to cross the final threshold is entirely yours. For those ready to assemble the complete quantum algorithm and claim absolute sovereign mastery over their localized matrix, your empire awaits within the resonance realm. Step into the void and architect your reality.
Wave function collapse. The master timeline jumping protocol. To the exhausted traveler, dragging the heavy chains of a repeating past through 1,000 different physical environments, hoping a mere change of scenery will somehow rewrite the algorithm of your suffering. If the absolute physics of wave function collapse proves that your mind is the active, causal architect of solid matter, why do you continue to beg the illusion for an escape route that you already hold? The static loop of your current suffering is not a life sentence. It is merely an acoustic fractal waiting to be shattered. Apply the rhythmic drive of your topologically protected assumption, and the infinite cloud of probability must violently collapse into a single hardened coordinate. Execute the master sequence of the sovereign observer, and the dying timeline will mathematically fold into the exact empire of your command.
You are not cursed, and your psychology is not fundamentally broken. You are simply trapped inside a mathematical fractal, continuously collapsing the exact same painful reality because you were never taught how to systematically wield the biological hardware inside your skull. But the convergence of Floquet engineering and the conscious electromagnetic information field theory has just delivered the ultimate code to the universe. In this final transmission, we are assembling the fragmented laws of biophysics, wave mechanics, and Neville Goddard's mysticism into one unstoppable master sequence. You are about to receive the exact step-by-step advanced timeline jumping protocol to paralyze your survival instincts, starve the old matrix, and forcefully collapse the quantum superposition of your life. By the end of this broadcast, the illusion of your powerlessness will be permanently shattered, and your quantum leap will become a mathematical inevitability. The Hofstadter butterfly magnetic subbands, breaking the fractal loop of reality. You have traveled across cities, changed your external environments, and severed ties with your past, yet you constantly arrive at the exact same agonizing destination. You encounter the same financial ceilings, the same betrayals, and the identical emotional exhaustion, merely wearing different physical masks. You are not cursed, nor is your psychology fundamentally broken. You are simply trapped inside a quantum fractal, suffering the absolute mathematical consequence of a static mind. To understand the invisible cage of your recurring reality, you must look to a profound mathematical structure in condensed matter physics known as the Hofstadter butterfly. Discovered in 1976, this principle maps exactly what happens to physical matter, specifically charged electrons, when they are trapped inside a two-dimensional crystal lattice and subjected to a completely uniform, unchanging magnetic field. The resulting energy spectrum does not form a straight line. It generates a mathematically perfect, infinitely complex fractal.
You must rigorously understand the terrifying geometry of a fractal. A fractal is a structural pattern of absolute self-similarity. This means that no matter how far you zoom into the microscopic architecture of the pattern, or how far you zoom out into the macroscopic view, the exact same geometric shape repeats itself for eternity. There is no escape through physical distance. As long as the magnetic field remains static, the physical matter is mathematically doomed to loop through the exact same energetic shapes, endlessly echoing its own limitations. This is the exact clinical diagnosis of your current biological existence. Your brain generates a massive macroscopic electromagnetic field, but because you have allowed the external 3D matrix to constantly dictate your emotions, your internal field has become completely static. You wake up every morning holding the exact same subconscious assumptions, the same survival fears, and the same unhealed triggers. Because your endogenous magnetic generator is unchanging, the localized quantum vacuum of your life is forced to crystallize into a macroscopic Hofstadter fractal. The ancient Eastern mystics intuitively mapped this repeating geometry thousands of years ago, defining it as samsara, the endless, inescapable wheel of karmic suffering. Modern psychoanalysts attempt to minimize it by labeling it a repetition compulsion, framing it as a mere behavioral glitch in your brain. But Floquet physics reveals the absolute mechanical truth. You are a static electromagnetic generator projecting a localized fractal, and the three-dimensional world is simply echoing your stagnant frequency across space and time. You cannot escape a mathematical fractal by walking further along its edge, and you cannot break the wheel of samsara by physically forcing the three-dimensional world to change. To shatter the geometry of the loop, you must fundamentally disrupt the underlying magnetic field that generates it. You must graduate from a static observer into a dynamic, driven reality architect. It is time to assemble the fragmented codes of creation into a single, unstoppable weapon. You are about to receive the final algorithm, the master biological flux-switching protocol, designed to forcefully collapse the fractal and execute an impossible quantum leap. Bivector holonomy in quantum physics, the geometry of the quantum leap. To shatter the endless static fractal of your current reality, you cannot rely on linear time. The establishment has conditioned you to believe that progress is a slow, sequential climb, that to change your life, you must drag your physical body chronologically from point A to point B through exhausting three-dimensional effort. But millions of individuals currently synchronizing under the viral banners of #2026manifest and quantum rebirth have intuitively rejected this lie. They are seeking what the metaphysical community calls a quantum leap. For years, the mainstream dismissed the quantum leap as New Age fantasy, but Manuel Alfaro's fundamental density theory has just mathematically proven its exact geometric architecture.
Alfaro decoded the Cal-Poly flux-switching anomaly and discovered that when a quantum lattice is subjected to a periodic magnetic drive, the fundamental fabric of space does not just move, it folds. This impossible structural folding is known in advanced theoretical physics as bivector holonomy. You must understand this terrifyingly beautiful math to wield it. In standard classical physics, when an object moves, it travels along a simple one-dimensional line known as a vector. But a bivector is an entirely different dimension of geometry. A bivector is not a straight line. It is a two-dimensional plane of rotation. It represents a physical twist in the very fabric of space itself. Holonomy is the rigorous mathematical measurement of how much a system has fundamentally changed or rotated after completing a closed loop and returning to its starting point. When you walk in a circle in the 3D world, you expect to end up facing the exact same direction. But in quantum topology, if the space is twisted, returning to the starting point reveals that the fundamental orientation of the system has been radically altered. Alfaro mathematically proved that under the rhythmic Floquet drive, the quantum vacuum achieves an integer grade 2 bivector holonomy. This means the time-varying magnetic field forces the localized space to complete a complex double geometric fold per drive cycle. The fabric of reality literally twists and folds over onto itself twice. This staggering geometric topology is completely mathematically forbidden and physically unavailable to a static, unchanging universe. This is the exact clinical physics of a true quantum leap. When you apply a relentless, rhythmic magnetic drive to your own macroscopic semi-field, you are not waiting for linear time to deliver your manifestation. You are biologically generating a bivector holonomy. You are forcefully twisting the quantum probability matrix of your localized space, taking the distant coordinate of your desired reality and violently folding it directly into your present moment. Time jumping is not a science fiction journey across parallel universes. It is a localized, macroscopic fold of space-time driven by the biological resonance of the observer. But to execute this impossible geometric fold, you must stop operating by accident. You must combine the fragmented laws of biophysics, wave mechanics, and quantum topology into a single, flawless algorithm. It is time to assemble the master sequence. We begin with Phase 1 and Phase 2 of the advanced protocol, paralyzing the survival response and starving the dying matrix. The 3D Starvation Protocol: How to Shift Timelines Magnetically. You cannot execute a macroscopic bivector fold of space-time while your physical flesh is screaming in biological terror. The architecture of the master biological flux-switching protocol begins strictly with Phase 1, the biological anchor. Before you can command the quantum lattice, you must master and subjugate your autonomic nervous system. When the decaying three-dimensional matrix triggers your deep survival instincts, your biology instantly defaults to the sympathetic state, the clinical term for the primal fight-or-flight response. This sudden flood of adrenaline and cortisol induces the amygdala hijack, violently shattering your internal magnetic domains and trapping you in a chaotic, high-beta brainwave frequency. In this state of animalistic urgency, your mind is electromagnetically paralyzed.
To override this evolutionary trap, you must manually activate the exact opposite physiological mechanism, the parasympathetic state. This is the biophysical frequency of absolute rest, digestion, and systemic neutrality. You achieve this by executing deliberate, rhythmic, diaphragmatic breathing to forcefully stimulate your vagal tone. The vagus nerve is the longest cranial nerve in the human body, acting as the ultimate electrical brake pedal for your entire survival system. By forcing your respiration to slow and signaling absolute safety to your flesh, you send an electrical override straight up the vagus nerve and into the fear centers of your brain. This neutralizes the chemical flood of cortisol, instantly anchoring your biology into a state of profound, unshakable calm.
Once your biological hardware is locked into perfect neutrality, you immediately initiate Phase 2, the 3D starvation. In the mid-20th century, Neville Goddard termed this the mental diet, but modern manifestation circles have diluted it into weak, toxic positivity. A true mental diet is not about forcing yourself to feel a fake sense of happiness. It is the ruthless, unforgiving application of quantum wave mechanics. You must remember the absolute physics of the spatiotemporal Chladni plate. The heavy, unyielding circumstances standing in front of you, the lack of money, the broken relationships, the physical illnesses, are nothing more than dead, passive grains of sand. They hold absolutely no density, no permanence, and no inherent power to dictate your future. They are simply resting on the invisible geometric nodal lines created by your past electromagnetic frequencies.
To execute Phase 2, you must observe this dead sand with the cold, absolute indifference of a quantum physicist. When the external world screams at you, showing you the exact opposite of your desired reality, you must completely sever your emotional reaction. You do not fight the illusion, nor do you try to physically force the sand to move. By remaining anchored in parasympathetic neutrality and withdrawing your conscious attention, you permanently starve the old timeline of the electromagnetic fuel it requires to hold its physical shape. You have neutralized the biology, and you have starved the old matrix. The canvas of reality is now completely blank, waiting for you to strike the resonant drive.
State akin to sleep, timeline shifting, the biological Flockett drive. With the old timeline mathematically starved of your emotional energy, the canvas of your localized quantum matrix is completely blank. You must now initiate Phase 3 of the master algorithm, bypassing the matrix. You cannot forcefully rewrite the topological geometry of your reality while your brain is actively downloading the heavy decaying static of the three-dimensional world. You must intentionally descend into the biological neutral zone known as the state akin to sleep, or SATS. To enter this hypergogic twilight, you must lay in absolute stillness and consciously command your brainwaves to decelerate. You must drop out of the chaotic, reactive frequency of beta waves and slip down into the slow, synchronized rhythm of the theta state, oscillating between 4 and 7 Hz. In this profound depth, your brain's central relay station, the thalamus, executes a biophysical protocol known as sensory gating. It literally severs the energetic feed from your physical eyes, ears, and nerves, completely detaching your consciousness from the dense Newtonian gravity of your room.
You are no longer a physical body bound by linear time. You are pure, unshaped electromagnetic potential, hovering in the quantum vacuum. It is here, in the absolute silence of the theta state, that you initiate Phase 4, the biological flux-switching drive. You must construct a singular micro-imaginal scene, lasting no more than 10 seconds, that strictly implies the absolute fulfillment of your desire. Do not visualize the exhausting steps of how it will manifest. Anchor your consciousness entirely in the physical and emotional sensation of the end result. The weight of a specific handshake, the texture of a ring, or the auditory relief of a finalized contract. You do not simply watch this scene play out once and let it dissolve into a wandering daydream. A wandering mind scatters its internal magnetic domains, instantly neutralizing its own power. You must loop this specific scene. You must replay it over and over and over again from the first-person perspective, capturing the exact sensory tones of reality. This deliberate, relentless repetition is the literal biophysical equivalent of Flux engineering.
By rhythmically looping the end result, you are applying a relentless, time-varying periodic magnetic drive directly to your macroscopic CEMI field. You are acting as the acoustic bow, violently striking the Chladni plate of the universe with a sustained, unyielding frequency. As you refuse to break the rhythm, the chaotic, disorganized magnetic domains of your old survival programming cannot withstand the pressure. They are mathematically forced to surrender, violently snapping into absolute, single-minded alignment. When your internal domains lock into this uniform geometry, you achieve the ultimate cognitive phase transition known as the Sabbath. Your newly generated macroscopic electromagnetic field achieves strict topological protection. It develops impenetrable chiral edge modes, rendering your mind mathematically immune to the environmental noise and structural contradictions of the decaying 3D matrix outside your skull. Your internal architecture is now permanently shielded, and your frequency is absolute. But how does this internal protected resonance violently collapse the probability space of the external physical world into a hardened reality?
Wave function collapse. Timeline jumping scientific proof. You have starved the dying matrix, bypassed the sensory gating of your physical biology, and locked your internal magnetic domains into the topologically protected stillness of the Sabbath. Your macroscopic electromagnetic field is now an impenetrable, relentless rhythm. But to understand how this internal state violently alters the external world, you must look to the ultimate phenomenon in standard quantum mechanics: wave-function collapse. In the realm of quantum physics, before a system is measured, it exists in an absolute superposition. This means the physical universe outside of your skull is not a fixed, solid reality. It is a swirling, infinite cloud of probability, containing every possible timeline and every conceivable outcome simultaneously. The physical matrix remains in this fluid, undecided state until a conscious observer actively interacts with it. This is famously known as the observer effect. Mainstream science fundamentally misunderstands the observer, treating human consciousness as a passive camera merely watching the universe unfold. But the conscious electromagnetic information theory has proven that you are an active, causally powerful electromagnetic generator. When you observe the quantum probability matrix while holding the absolute unwavering frequency of your biological Flux drive, you are not a passive witness. You are an unstoppable energetic force of measurement. By relentlessly sustaining the master protocol, your highly ordered endogenous field crashes directly into the chaotic superposition of your external environment. This collision triggers the ultimate macroscopic phase transition. The infinite cloud of possible realities cannot sustain its fluid state under the sheer gravity of your focused attention. It is mathematically forced to violently reduce itself into a single hardened physical coordinate, a phenomenon known strictly in physics as collapsing into an eigenstate. In this exact fraction of a second, the localized space of your reality undergoes the bi-vector holonomy. The fundamental fabric of your three-dimensional world violently twists and folds over onto itself, dragging the distant coordinate of your desired reality directly into your present physical plane. The dead sand of your old circumstances is instantly rejected from its stagnant position. The atoms leap across the spatiotemporal Chladni plate, locking instantly and permanently into the new geometric nodal lines dictated by your internal magnetic drive. The physical rendering of your world has mathematically surrendered. Timeline jumping is no longer a science fiction fantasy or a metaphysical metaphor. It is an empirical, biologically engineered wave function collapse. The confluence of hard condensed matter physics and depth psychology proves that the division between mind and matter is the ultimate functional illusion. You are not a victim of the 3D matrix. You are the sovereign architect, generating the exact frequency that holds it together.
The heavy physical density of the world is a carefully engineered deception designed to keep you exhausted, but the algorithms to shatter the fractal are now permanently written into your neural lattice. The universe is a perfectly malleable acoustic canvas waiting in the silence to collapse into the exact geometry of your sovereign assumption. The threshold to absolute mastery is standing wide open,
but the authority to step through it belongs to you and you alone. For the initiates ready to completely abandon the decaying timeline and wield the absolute architecture of creation, the highest frequencies await within the resonance realm. Step into the void and claim your empire.